So this is going to be a little weird coming from me, but I've noticed that with the Captain Marvel movie release approaching in just really like a week and a half at this point, maybe 2 weeks, something like that, that I've noticed that there are a lot of people that are like, seem to me to be really looking forward to the idea of the movie failing. And that just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Keep in mind, I'm not exactly looking forward to the movie. Um, I'm not. For one thing, just the character herself has just never ever really been that exciting. The best she was during the Brian Reed series in the mid 2000s when she still went by Miss Marvel and she still had the old costume and that sort of thing. But ever since she became Captain Marvel, uh, it's there really hasn't been much to like about her. And I feel like that's reflected in the fact that they keep having to relaunch her series over and over and over again. I don't know much about Brie Larson, but I don't really think I like her that much from what I do know about her. And I'm just kind of tired of the MCU formula in general. I feel like the idea that they have a formula is pretty much undeniable, and they've been doing it for over 10 years now. And I feel like that the Avengers movie that comes out later this year will be in a lot of ways a jumping off point. So, yeah, not a whole lot to get excited about with this movie, but that being said, looking forward to it failing is probably a losing proposition. Um, for one thing, like its box office projections right now is about $100 million for an opening weekend, which is pretty good. Um, it is interesting that they've had to revise it down so much that at one point it was projected to make like over 150 million, and now it's being projected to make 100 million. But just because it's less of a hit than theoretical projections may have at one time predicted, doesn't mean it's going to be a failure. Um, if I had to guess, I would guess that the revising down is due to initial advance ticket sales being really high because for there are a lot of people that are excited about this movie too. I'll get to them, but um, the initial like the day one advance ticket sales might have been really high, but then as time went on, fewer and fewer people were buying the advance ticket sales, so that as it went on, it wasn't nearly as high as they might have thought. Why that's happened, who knows? It could just be that the interest isn't there for the character that Disney Marvel are hoping for. Um, it could it be that it's because of some of the stuff that Brie Larson has said. Well, maybe, but the thing is, like, as pissed off as people get about that stuff, most people really don't care about this online drama. Like the fact that she once talked about white male movie critics, it's like who's really gonna be who's even gonna know about that would be inclined to see the movie that would then not see the movie because she said that, right? Like when you realize how many people are really going to be affected by that, it's not very much, and that's something that you see consistently, that people really just don't care about the online stuff. And not only that, the stuff that she was saying, it wasn't worse than what a lot of other Hollywood lefties say. So I mean, yeah, she said some dumb stuff about um, movie critics being overwhelmingly white and male, and a couple other things here and there. But I mean, for the most part, it's pretty much in line with what the rest of Hollywood say. I mean, look at the dumb speeches that some Hollywood female celebrities gave at the Women's March, right? Like it's those are way worse. So I mean, if your problem is with what she said, then really your problem is with Hollywood in general. In which case, were you gonna see the movie anyway? At least legally. And then, like I said, like $100 million, it's not as high as they were projecting, but it's still pretty good. It would be in line with a lot of other movies that the MCU films have released. I think their weakest movie, if not ever, at least in a long time, was just came out this past summer, and that was Ant Man and the Wasp. I don't know like, the exact numbers on it, but I know it didn't do nearly as well as certain other movies did, at least. I mean, they had Black Panther and Infinity War come out last year, which did phenomenally well, even by the standards of the MCU slash Disney films. So, Ant Man and the Wasp comes out and it lands soft. Disney really didn't care that much about that. I don't think there's been a single MCU movie that has been a genuine flop. There's been some that didn't do as well as they would have hoped, but none of them were flops. Which brings up another point, which is that it's like, has there ever truly been a bad MCU movie? I agree that there are some that are weaker than others. Most people agree that Thor 2 was one of the weaker ones. I wasn't a big fan of Guardians 2, Iron Man 2, another weaker one. But for the most part, even the ones that are relatively less good were still not the worst movies that came out that month, maybe even that week. I mean, they still are entertaining, and there's a reason for that, and it's basically because for a long time at least, and it's probably still true, Disney basically couldn't afford a flop when it came to the superhero movies. They needed every movie to do really well because they had this whole universe planned, and if any movie faltered, then the money they had for the next movie wasn't going to be there. There were analysts that were talking about this back in 2010 or so when the idea was still new and people weren't sure if it was going to work or not, about how Marvel's kind of backed itself into this corner, and they got out of it. For better or worse, it's worked out really well for them. So because they couldn't afford a flop, they didn't let directors have a lot of control over it. This is something that, especially all the early directors in the MCU, they all talked about this, that you really couldn't make the movie you wanted to. It seems like they've changed that philosophy a little bit. Like Thor Ragnarok, which I hated, but I understand I'm in the minority on that one. But Thor Ragnarok, the director clearly had a lot of freedom with the story. I know the guy's name, but I can't pronounce it because it's some weird New Zealander Maori name. The director of Black Panther clearly had a lot of freedom. The Russo brothers, who directed Winter Soldier, Civil War, and the last Avengers movie, they clearly have a lot of freedom. But the point is that even with the director, like, I don't think it's still Disney, right? Like, they're not gonna let the director make a bad movie. So if they have to shoot, 85% of it in reshoots, and they have to, repackage it and do whatever they can to sell it, they're gonna do that. And they're going to replace all the creativity with lame jokes and bad CGI if they have to. I don't know if they did have to or not with this movie. It doesn't seem like they did, but it's gonna follow that MCU formula. And a lot of people have talked about some of the dumb stuff that Brie Larson has said, but not a lot of attention has been paid to the actual director. I forget his name off the top of my head, but the director's never really said anything bad. In fact, he's consistently said that he just wants to make a 90s style action movie in the vein of Terminator 2. Which, if he actually succeeds in that, that could be really cool, even if the lead is underwhelming. And that's the other thing. Like, I'm not excited about Brie Larson. She doesn't look like a very pleasant person. She doesn't look like an action star to me. But, I mean, then again, I didn't think of that about Anne Hathaway going into The Dark Knight Rises. And then she ended up being one of the best parts of that movie. And I really wasn't sold on Ben Affleck, and he ended up being one of the best parts of Batman v Superman. Maybe the best element. Hell, Gal Gadot. I wasn't really sure about Gal Gadot. I mean, her role in Batman v Superman was so small that I really couldn't get a gauge of her, so I really wasn't sure how Wonder Woman was going to turn out. And then that turned out to be a really good movie. So, like, I mean, there's a history of geeks and nerds and whatever else hating something before it comes out, and then it actually comes out, and then they actually like it. I don't know if Captain Marvel's going to be that way or not. Some people are making a big deal of the fact that the Rotten Tomatoes want to see score is really low right now. I think that that's artificial. I think that that's because, like, I hate to blame, trolls or something, but I think this actually was just kind of a troll campaign. Some media outlets said it's review bombing the movie, but you can't review bomb a movie that isn't up for review. This is just simply the want to see feature on Rotten Tomatoes, and some people are making a big deal of the fact that that number is so low. But whether it's artificial or not, have you ever seen or not seen a movie because of the want to see metric on Rotten Tomatoes or any other aggregator site? I haven't. I've cared about the review numbers themselves, but I've never cared about that feature. And I mean, with the MCU, it's already such a well-known property that I feel like people have pretty much already made up their minds whether they're going to see it or not, and that they're not going to go by some number on an internet forum. So I don't really make a big deal about that. I do know that there are people that, just as there are people who really seem primed to hate this movie, there are also people who are like really oddly slavishly devoted to this movie, and those people I don't understand at all. There are people that seem to be convinced that Captain Marvel is going to like change the face of cinema, maybe even change the face of American society. I don't understand that at all. But there's some people who are really, really defensive and very, very vocal about expressing how this movie is going to be some kind of game changer, and it's like it's a Disney Marvel movie. It's going to be like all the other Disney Marvel movies. Um, and I understand that, to a certain extent, that really does dampen the enthusiasm when you see the kind of weirdos that defend this movie. But people said that about Black Panther, too. And they still say that about Black Panther, to be fair. But it doesn't change the fact that Black Panther was an okay movie. It wasn't as good as some people say. It definitely wasn't Oscar worthy. But it was an okay movie. I didn't, hate myself while I was watching it. Even though there was this annoying, online fight that was ongoing about it, about how some people claiming that this was some kind of triumph of African virtues, and it's or some kind of triumph of African culture, and then other people saying, oh, actually, Black Panther is like a traditionalist, and he's like, all right, it's like, this is all dumb. And then the movie comes out, and it turns out that he's a neocon. Like Black Panther was created by two Jewish guys and it was produced by a bunch of Jewish guys. The black part of it is just incidental. And it is really weird that people kind of let themselves get sucked into the corporate hype machine like that. I don't really understand that at all. Yeah, I don't understand how you could be some kind of devotee of social justice and then go all in on supporting Disney of all things. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. But so that does kind of dampen your enthusiasm for it. But the movie's probably going to make its money back and more. The movie is probably going to be watchable. May not be the best movie that comes out this month. It may not. It's definitely not going to be the best MCU film. But it'll be watchable. Right? Is it possible that Brie Larson really will be just that uncharismatic? And that wooden and that annoying? Yeah, it's possible. It is. But even if she is, I don't think that Disney would let the film be bad, even if that was the case. They would make it around it. It's not going to be a whole lot different from all the other MCU films. So, I don't know. I guess this whole video was just made because I'm not sure I've ever seen a movie with this kind of hate train about it before it comes out, and it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing where people criticize the movie because of how the trailer was pretty underwhelming, and then there are others that are saying, oh, you're just putting it down because you're a woman, because it's as a woman as a lead, and then those people point out, no, we like other movies as women, this one just looks dumb, and that kind of feeds into this outrage culture. But nevertheless, it is misplaced, and I guess if you're really into that, don't be too surprised when the movie does 120 million on opening weekend and then has a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, those aren't the best numbers you could hope for, but they're perfectly adequate for any movie, even an MCU film. So yeah, tell me what you think. Tell me if you actually are looking forward to the movie. Tell me if I'm wrong. Like, comment, subscribe. In any case, this is Unranked Chevron signing off.